Three.
Good evening, konbanwa everyone. Welcome to our panel discussion on what Malaysians should do to successfully navigate Japan's business culture, where we have a panel of industry experts from various organizations sharing with us their experience and insights on working in Japan. Here with us today, we have Mr. Kenny,
Hi.
Mr. Napier,
Hi.
Miss Alicia,
Hello.
and Miss Valerie,
Hi, guys.
whom we have introduced through our lecture slides before this. How is everyone doing?
We're good.
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
good.
we're fine. We're good. Yep.
Thank you for taking the time to come on live so that we can have a lively discussion on what business practices are involved when dealing with the Japanese, how best to navigate it. Our esteemed guests will be discussing various Japanese business practices surrounding scenarios such as gift giving, business meetings, workplace culture, and workplace communication. Without further ado, let's kick off our discussion with the Japanese gift giving ritual. Good evening, Mr. Kenny.
Good evening.
You've been doing business with Japanese businessmen over the years. How do you compare the gift-giving culture between Japan and Malaysia?
Well, in Japan, the act of gift giving to business associates is understood as a form of relationship investment in Japan, where people show that they are interested in doing business with you. But in Malaysia, gift giving in business is perceived as an act of bribery, which is why Malaysia ranked poorly in the Corruption Perception Index. Therefore, Malaysian people tend to be cautious about gift giving during gift giving in business as a gift, especially against the backdrop of one of the biggest financial scandals in history. Despite this, when Malaysian deals with the Japanese, we should also follow their business etiquette and get them gifts to show that we are understood and respect their culture.
I see. Mr. Napier, so what do you suggest Malaysians do to successfully navigate to Japan's gift-giving ritual?
Okay, so from my past experience, I suggest that when Malaysians give gifts to the Japanese, they must be sure that the gifts does not have the label made in Japan on them, as this would shows that you did not exercise enough care during the gift giving selection process. So as a Malaysian, you should also avoid giving gifts that are associated with the number 4, 9, and 43. So because as to the Japanese, this number are pronounced, the pronunciation of these numbers sounds similar to the words that are believed to bring.
Who would have thought? Numbers 4, 9, and 43 are unlucky numbers in Japan.
Yes, and Malaysian also should make sure to give gift without the company logo. Might be perceived as a cheap promotional item. Instead, they should give gift like local specialties.
Oh, so cake lapis and other kinds of kueh would make a good gift. Thank you, Kenny, for this helpful tip. Does anyone else have anything to add about gift giving to the Japanese?
Sure, if I may.
Oh, yes, please go ahead, Miss Alicia.
All right. So, as Japan is a highly hierarchical society where status and rank are number one, Malaysians should also avoid giving the same gifts to Japanese associates of different and unequal rank, as this is offensive and disrespectful to higher ranked Japanese.
Oh, I see. So Malaysians have to be really mindful when giving their Japanese associates gifts. That was very
Yep.
informative. Thank you, Kenny and Alicia. Moving on, Mr. Napier, good evening. You've worked with Japanese people and had them as clients in your previous audit organization. Do share with us how different Japanese business meetings are compared to the ones we have here in Malaysia.
Okay, thanks, Theodore. So meetings, there is an important ritual or custom called as the meshi kukan. So which basically means the exchange of business card. So this is new to us Malaysians as because we do not have the habit of exchanging business card, and we usually use small talks to make one acquaintance.
So what happens when we don't have a business card to give to our Japanese associates?
So that's exactly what we Malaysians should avoid when attending business meetings with the Japanese. So to successfully conduct ourselves, we must first ensure that we bring along enough business cards, because if we don't bring enough business cards, if we don't bring enough, if we don't offer a card to the Japanese in return, they will think that we're not interested in getting acquainted or that our status in our company is very low or high. And moreover, since English is not a widely understood, um, it's not widely understood by the Japanese, there are high-powered distance and hierarchical people. We should also include both the Japanese and English wording on the business card, along with our professional titles, advanced degrees, and memberships or in professional organization.
Thank you. Miss Valerie, do you agree with what Mr. Napier has just said?
Yeah, I totally agree. Having your excuse me, having your designation and professional background info will definitely help raise your perceived credibility if like you're a woman. And if I could add another point,
Yes, of course. Sorry.
sorry, you broke off for a second. It's okay. Thank you. When presenting your business card to the Japanese, please be sure to offer it with both hands and that the wordings are facing the recipient. And both hands should also be used when accepting a business card. Also, do remember to pause to read the business card to show respect towards your associates.
Thank you for your input, Miss Valerie. I heard the Japanese are also hard on punctuality when it comes to business meetings. How true is this? And how different is Japanese concept of time compared to ours?
I would say very true. The Japanese are extremely strict and precise when it comes to time, which is like a complete opposite of how we polychronic Malaysians treat time. Personally, I perceive time as flexible and therefore would have a habit of arriving late to business meetings and appointments. But this was so not okay in Japan, which is why I had to shift my Malaysian rubber time when I was actually working there.
Mr. Napier, your thoughts on Malaysians' rubber time? Are there ways for Malaysians to be more punctual to business meetings with the Japanese?
So what Miss Valerie said was relatable to most Malaysians, I believe. So it is common for Malaysians to start meetings later or even earlier than the scheduled time because of our rubber time concept. And despite this, we need to be punctual to meetings to have a good relationship with the Japanese. So to do so, Malaysians should start their journey to the meeting location early in case of unexpected delays. So we should also follow the Japanese practice of Jupon Mekudo, which teaches people to aim to be 10 minutes earlier for appointments. So and additionally, one should also pick up the habit of using the planner or developing daily schedules so that they can plan their day around meeting times and in a way that to prevent them from being late.
I see. What about in the case of inevitable delays? Mr. Kenny, have you ever been late to a business meeting with the Japanese?
Yes, a few times actually. However, I realized that I'm going to be late for a meeting. I will call ahead to inform my Japanese associate, and I will to also apologize profoundly even if the case of the delay isn't my fault.
Hmm. Indeed, we must be the bigger person at times, even when something isn't our fault. Thank you for this insightful input. Let's venture into the topic of workplace culture in Japan. Good evening, Miss Alicia. You must be very familiar with the corporate culture in Japan since you worked there for quite a few years. What can you tell us about adjusting to the work relationship and interaction that exists within the Japanese workplace?
Yeah, good evening. In terms of their workplace culture, the senpai kohai seniority system is encrypted in most organizations in Japan. As Malaysia is also hierarchical and already incurs high power distance in their work culture, it was actually easier for me to adjust to their senpai kohai system as both cultures are rather similar to one another.
That's very good to hear. Do you have any tips for Malaysians regarding their senpai kohai seniority system?
The first thing to take note of is to always address mentors or seniors as senpai unless told otherwise, and also remain respectful and courteous when speaking and comply to instructions at all times or requests given by seniors. And also, since it's common for employees who just joined a Japanese firm to be instructed by their senpais to work from lower ranks, such as maybe doing clerical work, they should use the opportunity to understand the corporate culture, practice, and their way around the office, which would greatly help one to adapt to their new workplace environment in future.
I see. What other advice would you give to Malaysians who are new to the senpai kohai system?
Since it's important for a kohai or better known as junior to have good relationship with their senpai in the workplace, I would highly recommend that one attends nomikai sessions, which are Japanese social dinner events, to build and strengthen their bond with their senpais. Since this is the only time where the senpai culture is more relaxed and the kohais are able to socialize with their seniors more freely.
Thank you for the good tip. What about you, Miss Valerie? Anything you'd like to add?
Hmm, as a woman working in Japan, one thing does strike me about their corporate culture, and it's the workplace gender inequality. I guess Malaysia is more forward in gender rights issues as women here have higher growth income than men and make up 33% of senior management positions in the country, which is actually higher than the world average. But in Japan, you can truly call it a man's world because of how male dominated and sexist their work culture is. Did you experience similar discrimination while you were working in Japan, Miss Alicia?
Yes, I actually did, and it made working in Japan much harder than it already is, having to deal with sexist coworkers who think so little of working women.
That sounds tough. How did you manage yourself in a toxic situation like that? And what would you suggest other Malaysian women to do to navigate Japan's workplace gender inequality?
Okay, well, for all the Malaysian women out there, when you work with the Japanese, please remember to emphasize your organization's importance and your role in it, and make any professional title possessed known to your Japanese counterparts. And also, since Japanese men are not accustomed to working alongside women, you should also gain their trust by demonstrating skills and professional competence to be seen as capable and reliable.
And you know what it makes you know what makes it even more unfair? I heard that women shouldn't participate in the same way as men when socializing or attending um, entertainment session, and they should always exercise caution and act professionally in both business and social situation, while men they can act however they please.
Wow, in this sense, Japan sounds very conservative. Thank you, Miss Alicia, for sharing with us on how best to navigate Japan's workplace culture. Now that we have an idea of what working with the Japanese is like, let's dive into Japan's workplace communication. Miss Valerie, you've spent quite a few years working in the communications field when you were in Japan. So I think you're the right person to ask for this. Please share with us how different workplace communication is in Japan compared to Malaysia.
Sure, let the communications guy talk about communication. You know what? Actually, workplace communication in Japan and Malaysia aren't as different as many might think it is. I mean, yes, it's true that foreigners will find the Japanese honorific titles complex since they cannot be easily translated. But Malaysians might find it a bit easier to adjust to their usage of honorifics since we also address each other by calling each other Mr., Miss, and Mrs., which is actually what we're doing right now. Furthermore, influential Malaysians have honorary titles such as Tun, Tan Sri, and Dato', which when you think about it can be as complicated to use as the san, kun, and sama suffixes that the Japanese use.
So, in this sense, it sounds like it would be easier for Malaysians to grasp their head around using honorifics. However, Japanese honorifics are still essentially distinct from the Malaysian terms used. What do you suggest Malaysians do to navigate this workplace communication honorific issue?
Um, my number one tip would be to attend Japanese communication courses. These courses are extremely helpful because it equips us with a basic understanding of the Japanese language. And we will learn key elements of the language, such as the appropriate suffixes to use in different situations. However, if one is already residing in Japan but is still struggling with honorifics, this group of Malaysians should try to get as much practical experiences as they can get through social situations where Japanese is spoken, like dining out, shopping, taking the public transport, as this will help increase our understanding of the honorific system.
Yes, I completely agree with this. And I'd like to add another tip. I believe Malaysians should also immerse themselves in Japanese media, such as watching a TV or listening to the radio, as this can further help their learning of complex honorific system. Having Japanese acquaintance, teaching them Japanese colloquialism and communication practice will help them as a lot as well.
Hmm, that's true. Natives know best after all. What about the verbal and non-verbal communication styles of the Japanese? Is it very different compared to how we Malaysians communicate, Miss Valerie?
Personally, I think Malaysia's communication culture is very similar to Japan's, since both countries practice high context communication. So the face-saving and indirect approaches we Malaysians use when communicating are also used similarly by the Japanese. Even the Japanese's non-verbal communication style is akin to ours, where body language, facial expressions, and voice tone are important in helping one understand the true message delivered.
That's great. It sounds like Malaysians would not have much of a problem communicating with the Japanese, apart from the honorifics and language barrier. Was that the case for you, Mr. Napier, when you dealt with your Japanese associates?
Well, I agree that yes, some Malaysians who practice high context communication style would definitely have an easier time communicating with the typical Japanese. But personally, personalities differ from one Malaysian to another. So those who are more direct, like myself, would likely struggle to communicate successfully in Japan because we do not know how to communicate subtly or um, how to read verbal cues.
That is very true, Mr. Napier. If this group of Malaysians aren't well versed in high context communication styles, then this would be recipe for misunderstandings. What do you suggest these Malaysians do to navigate this sticky situation, Miss Valerie?
Well, firstly, they should avoid giving flat reactions, being openly critical towards mistakes, and confronting the Japanese as to not offend them. One should also practice discretion paired with positive news when delivering negative news to Japanese people to avoid making them uncomfortable or lose face.
Hmm, I see. Is there any way for low context Malaysians uh, to more accurately understand what is being communicated by the Japanese? Any thoughts from you, Miss Alicia?
Yes, to understand the underlying meaning of Japanese people's verbal or nonverbal message, I highly believe we should pay very close attention towards what is said or unsaid by the Japanese and what kind of kinetic behavior are being displayed.
Agreed. And if I may add, when unsure of a situation and its implications, one should get clarifications by asking the Japanese speaker open-ended questions multiple times to get a complete answer.
Thank you for everyone's input. This has been an interesting talk about how the Japanese communicate in the workplace. We are approaching the end of our panel discussion for today, so let me recap what we have discussed, especially on successfully navigating in the Japanese business culture. On to gift giving, right? In order to navigate the Japan's gift giving culture, it is advisable to give specialty from Sarawak, Malaysia, to avoid gift labeled made in Japan, to make sure gift yard the company's logo, to avoid gift giving that are associated with the numbers 4, 9, and 43. For business meetings, in terms of business cards, do bring along enough business cards. Prepare a business card with both English and Japanese wordings and professional background information. Present the card with both hands and pause to read the card. In terms of punctuality, okay, please do start your journey early to the meeting. Practice the Japanese teaching of being 10 minutes early. Pick up the habit of using a planner or developing daily schedules and inform ahead of time if you are going to be late. In the workplace culture, for the senpai kohai system, okay, please do address the seniors as senpais unless you are told otherwise. Remain respectful and be courteous when speaking to them. Follow instructions or requests given by the seniors and participate in the non-becoming sessions when invited. For workplace gender inequality, women should emphasize their organizations, their role in it, and any professional titles they have. They should also demonstrate their skills and professional competence and act professionally in all situations at all times. For workplace communications, onto honorifics, right? It is advisable to attend Japanese communication courses, also to participate in day-to-day Japanese social situations, and to tune into Japanese media. For verbal and non-verbal communication, please do avoid openly rejecting, criticizing, or confronting others. Be very attentive toward what is being said and unsaid, and any kinetic behavior shown. Next, when unsure of any situation, please do get clarifications multiple times from the Japanese. Thank you once again for joining us today in our panel discussion on the Japanese business culture. We have learned and gained much on how to successfully manage ourselves when working with the Japanese from this session. Thank you, Ms. Valerie, Ms. Alicia, Mr. Naper, Mr. Kenny, for sharing with us your meaningful insights and valuable experiences. Thank you and have a great day ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.